All right, we've got the recording going. So thanks for joining me today for our first inaugural webinar where we're going to talk about empowering your federal contracting journey. I'm really excited to be here and talk with everybody about this. I usually do free 30-minute consultations with individuals, but that's starting to get booked up really fast and I'm having a lot of limited time. So I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to talk with everybody and kind of get the same information out there that you would get with me in a 30-minute consult and give you some food for thought. The things that I asked people to think about when they're embarking on their federal journey, contracting journey, or getting ready to move that forward and upgrade or expand that journey into some new areas of federal procurement. So just a little bit about Federal Subcontract Solutions, or FedSubK for short. This company was put together on the premise that we want to be a trusted resource and advocate for small businesses as they create and sustain a presence in the federal marketplace. And the vision for Federal Subcontract Solutions is really to provide consolidated, comprehensive, and affordable resources to help you expand your knowledge of federal contracting regulations and processes. We're built on several values: integrity, equity, respect, enthusiasm for the subject matter, empowering small businesses by sharing a lot of our knowledge freely, and then learning and growing through mutual experiences, studying, listening, research, all those things. A little bit about myself, just if you haven't had a chance to check out FedSubK's About page. I'm a former federal contracting officer, chief of contracting. I've also been a source selection authority. That's a person that decides who actually receives contracts over certain dollar values. I've been a contracting officer's representative, so I've actually worked with companies, helping them during performance and been the eyes and ears of contracting officers in the federal space for many years. My last position in federal government was a FAR policy subject matter expert, where I worked with the Civilian Agency Acquisition Council, providing guidance and support related to all policy and impacts on the SAM.gov system and related systems. But I've also, since December of 2022, when I retired, become a small business consultant, and I'm a certified women-owned small business, doing some instructor work, speaking, authoring papers on small business initiatives and issues. And I bring all this experience to the table in a way that I want to help small businesses. And this all kind of came about as a contracting officer. I really saw small businesses coming in, trying to find opportunities and entry points to get into the federal space. And it was very important to me to help those small businesses when they came into my office, help teach them about what the processes were, find avenues and entry points for them. And I decided that I would grow that into a business when I retired. So I do quite a bit of work with small businesses, especially early entrant small businesses, and then other businesses who, again, are just looking to expand in the federal marketplace. So if you're here today, there's probably a couple of reasons, and I've listed some of them on this slide here. You're likely here because, you have a product or a service you want to sell to the government, right? That's what we're all trying to do in this space. Um, you may find federal procurement rules and processes very confusing, and they are. There's lots of regulations, lots of rules, lots of processes, and not everybody does them the same. So it can be confusing, and it can change from one agency to another, even one contracting officer to another. Trying to dispel that confusion and clear that up is part of what I'm here to try and do and help small businesses with through the website, through webinars like this, and my newsletter that I have monthly. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. You probably want to find some efficient and intentional time and resources. You want to be very efficient and intentional with those time and resources. You don't want to put money out there you don't need to spend. You don't want to have your people doing things that maybe is like chasing a tail, right? You don't need to be doing that. Let's put make that time very efficient and intentional, because it's limited, right? As a small business owner, you're the one doing everything. You're wearing many hats, and we want to make sure that your time is well spent. You may be looking for helpful insider tips. I have a lot of tips. I can give you the contracting officer's point of view, and I try to do that in everything we talk about, including what we're going to discuss here today. And maybe you're just not sure what to do next. You've heard about this, you want to try it out. You've got a contract, but you're not sure what to do with it. You have some contacts at an agency, you're not sure how to approach them about maybe selling to the government. There's a lot of questions here that we can answer. So that's what we're here to do today. Now, one of the things I always ask contractors when I meet with them as small businesses is there some things that you also need to be willing to do in this part of this process? And are you willing to empower yourself with facts and not myths? We hear a lot of myths, and I'm going to bust a few of those here in the next slide. But learn the facts about what the federal marketplace is all about and how things really are accomplished. Are you willing to do some of the homework? There's a lot of research that goes into this, and there's reading and watching webinars and attending events, learning events, so that you learn how to register in SAM, what are certifications all about, how to create a proposal or a capabilities statement, how to do market research and target agencies that may be interested in what you're trying to sell. That's the homework piece. There's no getting away from the homework. So I'll tell you some areas where I think your time is best spent in the homework piece. Also, we're going to talk about some essential steps that you need to take before you ever seek your first contract. I've had a lot of small businesses come to me that are just registered in SAM and say they are ready to bid on a contract. Can I help them create that bid? There's a lot of steps that need to happen before you do that. And I want to make sure that companies are set up and positioned well before they seek that first contract, because that's what you'll need to be successful down the road. Are you willing to exercise some persistence and patience? This is all about the long game. It's mini sprints as part of a marathon, is how I like to look at it. So being very persistent in when you're reaching out and marketing to the government, but also being patient and understanding there's certain times and places where it's best to contact the government and times where it's not, and understanding how that flow kind of works, and being patient during that life cycle process. And then, are you willing to think beyond the win? Everyone's always chasing the win for the contract, but not a lot of people are really recognize what happens after you win. The work is only one piece of that performance. And there's also other things that go on behind the scenes in terms of managing your contract that you need to be aware of before you get that first contract. So we'll talk about some of that today too. So when it comes to empowerment, I want you to think about facts and not myths. There's a lot of myths out there in the GovCon space, right? You hear a lot of people promising win ratios and win percentages, and that this is an easy process. It is a process, but it's not always easy, and there's not a lot of shortcuts to it. The people that you hear have the shortcut stories are the exceptions to the rule, not the rule. So let's look at a couple of the myths that I hear quite often, or I see. Even you can see these out on LinkedIn or other social media platforms when it comes to some of these topics. So when it comes to government buying, there's this myth that the government buys what you sell, that the government buys everything. Now, the government buys a lot, but it only buys what it needs. So if what you're trying to sell is not something the government needs, or it's not what a particular agency needs, that's where it's important to understand, does the government buy what I sell, and who is buying what I sell? That's the facts. You want to figure out those facts before you jump into this space. That's one of the first steps, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And the next myth is, I just need someone to walk me in the door. I get a lot of people that come to me and say, hey, you used to work at GSA, you used to work at the Army Corps of Engineers, people, you could just, let somebody know I'm out here and I'm ready to accept a contract, or I have this to sell. It doesn't really work that way. The only person that can build that relationship with an agency is you. And as a former contracting officer, I will tell you that when former employees of the agency, military members and civilians, would come into my office after the fact, marketing for a company, and pretend as if they didn't know how the rules were played, it didn't do them any favors. It's a frustrating thing. It's not about who you know. necessarily in terms of somebody walking you in the door. You can build those relationships on your own. It's a way to do it. That's that persistence piece we're going to talk about, and it's very important that you look at that as your way to get in with an agency, build that trust, and work forward toward mutually beneficial goals for both you and the agency. Then there's bids and offers. I think there's a myth that the more I bid on, the more I can win. You'll see a lot of things out now on LinkedIn about new AI tools that can help you put out more proposals faster. Don't be caught behind. These are very important things that I think people are seeing, and there's a lot of fear of missing out if they're not using these tools. Where the fact is actually that bidding on everything can net you nothing. Again, this goes back to that intentional piece of how you want to spend your time and make sure you're writing bids and offers that you know are going to win, not just for the sake of throwing something against a wall to see if it sticks and you're the winner. That's not a good strategy, and we'll get into more of that in a bit. When it comes to winning a contract, some people think, hey, once I win a contract, I'm set for life. Um, Actually, once you win a contract, that's when the hard work starts. I talked about, thinking beyond the win. A lot of people don't. I've had several small businesses bring me contracts that they've won and said, now what do I do? They know how to perform the work, but they didn't or don't recognize that there's a lot of contract management and reporting and compliance that goes on behind the scenes. And that is just as important to the government, that you understand how to manage and comply with the contract, as it is that you can perform the work. So you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success, not only just winning the contract, but understanding how you have to manage that moving forward. When it comes to longevity, there's a myth that once you're in, you're in. They can't kick you out. Once you're an incumbent, you'll be in there for life. Incumbents do have advantages because they work with the agency on a daily basis. They hear the pain points and they see what is happening and moving forward in the agency. But incumbents lose because sometimes they forget to listen, they forget to talk to their customer, or they don't evolve to match what the agency needs. I've seen what I call incumbentitis happen very often, and I've unfortunately had to debrief contractors who have been incumbents but lost their contract because they just were offering the same old thing over and over and over, and the government's needs had evolved. Don't get incumbentitis. I have an article on that on my website, and I'll show you where to find that later. Also, there's GSA schedules. There's this myth that once you have a GSA schedule, agencies will buy from you. You will have sales, like crazy. And again, kind of that set for life thing. Now, GSA schedules are a great tool to have, but they only are really there for you once you have people interested in buying from you. They're a great marketing tool. They're not a build it and they will come type of tool. They need to be something that you use as one method if you choose to get a GSA schedule. You don't have to have one to be successful in the marketplace, by the way. But if you choose to do that, if that's something that is, lends itself to what you're trying to sell, they are a marketing tool. They're a way that you can have agencies be more interested in coming to you because it is a more streamlined process for them to buy. So these are some of the myths that I want to kind of bust here, because I hear a lot of these, I see a lot of these online, and it's really important to go in with your eyes open as to how these things really play out in actuality when you're in the federal marketplace. Another thing I, mentioned was making sure you're willing to do the homework. And I call these the 3 Ps: policy, process, and people. Understanding those 3 items. Now, when we talk about policy, we're talking about the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR. DFARS would be the Defense's FAR supplement. Those are the big 2, but every agency has one. So that's something to consider and be knowledgeable about any agencies that you're targeting for work. You want to be very, very aware of labor laws. Labor laws are something that I have seen come back and bite contractors because they just simply were not aware of how they needed to comply in terms of fringes and benefits, required prevailing wages, even what their subcontractors are paying in terms of wages. Even a subcontractor's lack of understanding and homework in this area can cause a prime contractor significant fines and issues. There's compliance, like I said, the things that come after award, where it's have you notified your employees of certain things? Have you done certain due diligence in drug-free workplace, things like that. And then there's reporting requirements. You have to report numbers of, if you're a service provider, Service Contract Act employees. If you employ veterans, you have to report the number of veterans you have. GSA schedules have all sorts of reporting that go along with that. Just being aware of what all that entails. The policy piece, I know it's the boring piece, but it's the piece that keeps you out of trouble. Then there's, you need to understand process. There's things such as pre-solicitation, solicitation, award, administration, closeout phases. Understanding the processes and what occurs in each of those phases is very important to understanding not only what to do and when to do it, but this next item, which is people, and when to contact people, and when you can and should and shouldn't maybe make those communications and reach out to build the relationships with people. And the people would be people that are the requiring activity, people that write the requirements, the buying activity, which are the people like your contracting officers, contract specialists, who actually are the face to industry during a solicitation and procurement. And then the end user, who's actually going to use the product or service that you're trying to sell, and also getting some information, working toward identifying that person and reaching out and getting to know those people as well. So do your homework in those three areas. And I'm going to expand on those just a little bit again to give you some ideas in each of those areas of things you might want to learn and know more about. In policy, acquisition.gov is where the FAR is housed and all the supplements. So if you're curious and need something to read, checking out the FAR and reading certain parts for small businesses, Part 19, which covers small business issues, is one of the best things to do. And Part 15, I say, is important too, because that's where negotiated procurements occur. That's all the bid, offer, proposal stuff that goes on in a negotiated acquisition. Those are two key areas that I think people should read. There's lots of others, but those are two places to start. Understanding that policies also come with deviations. Sometimes there's changes to policy that occur through rulemaking that aren't yet in a final rule that becomes part of FAR. And FAR outlines where deviations occur, so they're easy to find, but just understand that they can exist. SBA also has its own policy, and it informs the federal acquisition regulation. SBA's website is very good. It lines out all the policy for their federal contracting acquisition programs, and you can find a lot of great information there. The Department of Labor, when I was talking about labor law, Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division has a tremendous site with a lot of guidebooks, fact sheets, everything you need to know about prevailing wages, labor law, Fair Labor Standards Act, etc. A place that you should bookmark and go to when you have questions about anything related to labor. Then there's mandatory sources of supply, to know if maybe what you're trying to sell is a mandatory source. The government may have a difficult time coming to you to buy if it has to buy it from a certain source. And then there's green procurement, everything environmental, green. You want to make sure you're aware of that, because the government has green procurement policies and initiatives that they're using, have been in play for a long time, but are becoming more and more important as time goes on. Under processes, one thing you're going to want to understand is, how does the government do market research? It can use any method, but there are some primary methods the government uses. Dynamic small business search being one of those. That's one of the steps that you'll see here when we come up and talk about essential steps. Understanding what the different acquisition methods are, the different type of work between services, construction, supplies, utilities, repairs, spares, maintenance, all these different things come with different rules about how they are procured. Also with processes, understanding the different contract types. What is a fixed price contract versus a cost reimbursement contract or a time and materials contract? If you're not familiar with that and the risks that come with each of those, I have some guides that can help you understand how that risk continuum works between the risk that the contractor accepts and the risk that the government incurs during those different use of those different contract types. Understanding a competitive process is really important, how that functions in terms of the rules during the competitive process, when you can and can't contact the government, and when they will and won't contact you. understanding commercial services, commercial products, or when those things are not considered commercial, and how that can change how an acquisition is managed, the clauses that are appropriated with that are attached, and the streamlined method of how those procurements can be done for commercial services or not. And then just understanding that the estimated dollar value of a contract can dictate much of the process and the approvals and the timelines and the time it takes to get everything done. So again, these are just part of the things to think about and kind of have a basic knowledge of before you enter this area. And then when it comes to people, understanding the roles and the players in the game are really important. And the ones that you'll typically, small businesses will typically have interaction with will be the contracting officer. For short, that's the CO. KO in the Department of Defense, they call it a KO because a CO is a commanding officer and they didn't want to confuse it. So a contracting officer is KO there. Contract specialist, that's the person that is trained to assist a contracting officer and can be the eyes and ears for that contracting officer in the contracting shop, and does a lot of the paperwork and the footwork and things like that that go along with the acquisition process. There's project managers who oversee projects, just like in the private industry. They're the requirements people. They're the one that bring the requirements to the contracting officers for them to purchase and complete. And then there's small business specialists. They're the internal advocate for small businesses in any agency. Every contracting office has one typically. And acquisition.gov, if you use that as a resource, if you go under the procurement forecast, you can find the small business liaison offices for each agency. And it's a great resource. And then people, there's an office, not just people, small business specialists, but offices of small business specialists that are the OSDBU, and they are in every agency usually at the headquarters level, and they are also the internal advocates for small businesses when it comes to procurement within an agency. They do a lot of the outreach to small business as well. They're the ones that run the events and that you see have the events for small businesses and conferences, host conferences. They're the people you most meet at a conference if you go from agencies as well. So just a few of the things under the 3 Ps. It seems like a lot, but really, if you break it down, it's not so much. You don't have to know everything. You just need to know where to find the answers. And again, that's what FedSubK is here to help you try to do. Now, when it comes to essential steps to begin your contracting journey, I believe there's 8 essential steps here, and I have these out on my website. I've got the link there so you can find them. It starts with researching the federal marketplace, and that's that whole key is the government even buying what I'm trying to sell? And then moving forward from there in a targeted fashion, an intentional fashion, so that when you register in SAM, you're selecting the right NAICS codes for your company and how the government classifies the work. You're creating a capability statement that is targeted to the agency or agencies that you're trying to do the work with. And you're getting your SBA certifications that will help agencies meet small business goals if you qualify for those certifications. Then there's the dynamic small business search, which I mentioned. That's part of that market research piece. It is the #1 place where federal agencies go to find out if small businesses exist to do work in certain NAICS codes. So it's really, really, really important. I can't stress that enough, that once you have yourself registered as a small business, even if you don't have certifications, if you're registered as a small business, that you go back out into the dynamic small business search area and you complete your profile there. I have a guide that talks to how to complete those profiles, and I will provide links to that here in a little bit. And then it comes down to building relationships at all levels. You want to build from the bottom up at any agency, or the top down. If you're lucky enough to have a contact at the top, great. But building from the bottom up is a great way to do it. And that comes along with some different procurement strategies you can think about. And we get into more of that when I talk with companies, depending on where they sit in the federal marketplace right now. Then it's finding opportunities. We all know about sam.gov, contract opportunities, but there are a lot of tools out there that can help you find opportunities as well. Some are free, most are at cost. And it's really important to decide how you want to set up a cadence to find those opportunities. Sam.gov is always free. You can set up recurring searches in there and make sure that you're seeing things as they post or as changes post to maybe an opportunity that you're interested in. And then lastly, before you ever submit your first proposal, I can't impress upon people enough the need to do a bid, no bid decision matrix. Come up with what makes sense for your company as to when you will or won't bid on an opportunity. And then from there, that's the intentional piece, being intentional about what you're doing. And then from there, submit that proposal or that offer or that bid that has the greatest chance of winning. These are what I feel are the essential steps to begin your contracting journey. Now I have these on the website, like I mentioned at that link. So let me kind of show you how they're set up. I've expanded this page recently, so you haven't seen it in a while. You can see that what I've done is I've provided some assessment of questions under each step. So these are questions that you need to ask yourself about your business, about what you provide, and be able to answer. And the ways you can answer that are through the action items. And everything you see underlined in these action items is a link to more guidance, to a website to help you find the information, to a guide or an article that will give you more information about this specific piece and how to do it. So this is how I recommend people work these steps. Very important to think through these things. These will set you up again for success without having to worry about feeling like you're missing out, you don't understand something about how to accomplish each of these steps, that you're maybe missing something before you start working through these steps and before you start talking to an agency. This will give you if you work through these steps, I promise that you'll have enough understanding that you can talk with an agency and feel confident about what you're talking about. You're confident about what you know about them, and you're confident enough in the processes, your understanding of the processes, that you can converse in a way that you won't be concerned that the agency may think you don't know what you're doing. I hear a lot of people say, I'm afraid to talk to an agency because I'm afraid I'm going to sound like I don't know what I'm doing. If you follow these steps, you will definitely learn enough that you know what you're doing, and you will prove that by using the terminology, the language, the lingo, and asking good questions where you feel there are gaps. And agencies, contracting officers like I used to be, really, really appreciate that. I cannot say that enough. Beth has asked a question. If slides will be available. Yes, I'm going to plan on putting this on my website. When I do, I'll probably announce it in my next newsletter, which will come out on the 5th of July, where they'll be located so that you can find them. So I hope that answers your question. So after you're working the steps, some people say, well, do I have to do these in order, or can I do any of these concurrently? I would always say that you always should start with researching the federal market. That's the most important, because if the government isn't buying what you're selling, or not buying, or there's too much competition in your market that it's too difficult for you to break into that segment in the federal marketplace, none of the rest of this matters. It really doesn't. I mean, you could be a sub and may have to register in SAM. That might be a possibility, but the rest of it doesn't really matter if you don't do that first piece. So always start with the research piece, or do that research piece concurrently, maybe while you're registering in SAM. The green arrows depict what I feel are interrelated steps that you could probably do at the same time. You can register in SAM. You have to have that done before you can do your SBA certification. That's why it sits in the order it does. But you could be working on creating a capabilities statement that you can add to later when you get an SBA certification, et cetera. So those 3 steps, I think you can kind of work in a similar cadence. Register in SAM first, and then you can be working on a capabilities statement at the same time. And once your SAM registration goes through, the SBA certification is your next step, because they're going to want to know you're in SAM before they take your application there. The researching the federal marketplace piece really comes into play when you're trying to build the relationships and find the opportunities, because you want to target those agencies that are buying what you're selling, And that's where you want to start building your relationships. And that's also where you're going to find the opportunities, because when you set up a recurring list of a target agency, or maybe in sam.gov of where you want to see opportunities, maybe you just only want to see them for the agencies you know are buying what you're selling. I mean, that's what to me makes the most sense. That way you're not, again, trying to run around and hit everything on the map. Again, there's a lot of fear of missing out. People will say, see opportunities, and they'll say, well, I can do a piece of that, or I can do a part of that. That's great if you know where you can find teaming members, or you're willing to go out and search for teaming members. But if you're not, you shouldn't be chasing opportunities that you know are not in your swim lane. It's very important to be, again, as small businesses, intentional in this market, build those relationships. It can take time, and do it with those agencies that you know need what you're trying to sell. It's very important. So, when it comes to that exercising persistence and patience piece, there are some things that I always recommend, and it kind of brings a few of these other things together that we've been talking about. So, making sure you build a solid and dependable team. Small businesses tend to be a flatter organization, right? With the owner doing a lot of the work themselves. They wear many hats. They're doing payroll. They're writing proposals. They're out shaking the hands at the agency. It's a lot of work. So build a team around you that helps lead you to success. There are a lot of contractors out there that can provide support. You can have part-time support. You can have 1099 support. But build yourself a solid and dependable team, so that when you're ready to go, when that one opportunity that looks like it was written for you is there, that you are ready and have the people you need to move forward. That's real important. And that can be even team members outside your organization. Starting to build relationships with other primes, if you want subcontract opportunities, or building it with other small businesses. Teams of small businesses that can complement each other's work are something the government loves to see. And either in a team arrangement where you're a joint venture, or a partnership, or in a prime sub relationship. So there's benefits to that to small businesses in numerous ways, and the government loves to see it. You should create a cadence for outreach, that you will meet with agencies or try to build those relationships on a rather routine basis. I used to have several small businesses that would just come in to me quarterly and stop by, shake my hand, say, hey, is there anything out there on the horizon that we might be of service to provide? Is there anything you can tell us about this past win that maybe would be helpful to us, like maybe a prime's name, so that we could market for subcontract opportunities, things like that. And just, were letting me know they were still available, still interested to support the mission that my agency had. And many times there were good opportunities when they were in the office. Something would come up and I'd say, I always tell the story of this. If you've heard this story before, you can go blah, blah, blah. Shauna, I've heard this before, but um, I had a small business that came into my office a long time ago. 8A was trying to get their first contract, had been in my office every quarter, always stopped by, can we have a cup of coffee? Can I have 15 minutes of your time? Happened to be sitting in my office when the chief estimator from our environmental group came down and brought a big chunk of estimates and filled up my inbox and said, sorry, these are late, but I'm down a couple people, and I'm just trying to play catch up, and I really need some help, and I'm just not sure how we're going to get it all done. And so things are going to be running behind. And this small business was an environmental consulting company that wanted to do environmental remediation work, environmental biology study type stuff. And the gentleman who was sitting there turned on a dime and said, without a beat missing, said, we can help you do estimating. Now, that's not the work that this 8A wanted to do, but it was a way to get their foot in the door. It was a way to build the relationship. It was a way to provide service that the agency needed. So being prepared to be agile and kind of anticipating some of this through this regular outreach, regular cadence, it can sometimes put you in the right place at the right time. And we did end up using that contractor to do environmental estimating. They were an 8A. We were able to give them a sole source contract within a few weeks, and they ran through $1 million very quickly. And now they're a very successful environmental contractor with the federal government, making, over 10 million a year. So you never know where it's going to start. But having that, cadence for outreach is really important. Maintaining that relationship, being that person that the government thinks of first and is front of mind when something comes up is how you make that happen. You need to create a unified message that's tailored to each target agency or mission. That may mean an individual cap statement for each agency. But if you have more than one person going out to conferences, to meet with agencies, making phone calls, sending emails, you want to make sure you still have a unified message. You don't want one person telling one person, a government agency that this is your target focus, and another person going to that same agency and telling them that you're doing something else. Try to create a unified message that is tailored to your agency. The next thing is, understanding that contracting is a team sport on the government side. It's not just the contracting officer. Contracting officers only buy what they're told needs to be purchased. They don't make the decision on what to buy in terms of, the government's needs. They are told we need to buy, 20 widgets, and they just decide how the widgets get purchased. If it's 20 widgets that cost $1 million, it might happen this way. If it's 20 widgets that cost $10, it might happen this way. So understanding that there's a lot of people involved, the people that write the requirements, the people that fund the money, provide the money and the funding, the end user, the contracting folks in that do the acquisition, you're typically the face to industry, and then there's also approvers and decision makers behind the scenes. So there's a lot of people there, and trying to find each of those to give your message to is important. When you are communicating, there's a couple things I recommend. I call it using the dribble method. The dribble method is where you send a simple email with a simple question that can give you a yes or no answer to whoever it is you're asking the question for. You can provide your information and say, we were wondering, do you have any women-owned small business set-asides coming up in fourth quarter of FY24? That's a simple answer that somebody can say yes or no to, and they will answer simple questions. If you're asking for long, drawn out explanations of things, the chances are they're not going to have the time to answer that email. They'll answer a yes or no, and then you can follow up with another question and say, okay, so if you have any woman-owned small business set-asides in this NAICS code, have you determined the acquisition strategy? They can answer yes or no. You can keep that kind of relationship going, asking smart questions. If you can't use the dribble method for yes or no questions and answers, then what you could do is you could say, I've read the FAR, or I've read this policy, or I've seen this acquisition out, and my understanding is this, and provide what your understanding is. Is this correct? Yes or no? Show that you're doing some of the homework, show that you're doing some of the research, show that you're trying to learn more about the agency's mission. It's really important to make those types of things quickly, because contracting officers will tend to answer those emails faster than they will any other email, because it's a quick, short answer, and they want to be helpful. They just don't have time to write long, drawn out answers to everybody. And then it does come down to, again, knowing when to communicate. There are points and times in the process of acquisitions where agencies are willing to communicate and when they can't communicate. And that's all in the rules. So anything pre-solicitation, before a solicitation hits the street, the agency's doing market research, they're coming up with their acquisition strategy, they're trying to figure out who's out there, and they're more likely to entertain a discussion than they can after the solicitation goes out, which means they have to keep the playing field level for everybody. And they can't just, meet with contractors who are interested or have communications with you except under certain, very formal processes. So, and then after post award, they can meet with you again, because that solicitation's over. They can talk to you about anything else. They can talk to you about if you were an offer, why you had issues with maybe a solicitation that you didn't win. They can talk to you about maybe upcoming similar work. And they can talk to you about, subcontract opportunities or other opportunities that may be similar in nature that they have forecasted down the road. So, there's times and places where they will answer and won't answer, and making sure that you understand that is really important so that you're not frustrating yourself or the government in terms of trying to answer questions. It also shows that you know what you're doing. You understand the life cycle process of acquisitions, and you respect the time and the process that it takes in that for the government, and it'll reflect very well on your company. And lastly, just thinking beyond the win. These are things that I think a lot of people they're really excited to get that first contract, but then they bring a contract to me many times and go, "Okay, can you tell us what we have to comply with?" There's a lot of things you have to think about, depending on the work you do and who you're doing it with, what agency. But things to really think about before you ever get into that first contract, especially larger contracts. We're talking like over $1.5 million. Doesn't mean these don't apply to smaller contracts, but even the large contracts, you want to make sure that you have a structure set up to manage that contract. It's not just you trying to piece it together at midnight on your computer and get the reporting done for, your company. That you have a real understanding of how to manage subcontractors and suppliers in terms of flowing down clauses that may need to be required to flow down for their compliance at all tiers. Making sure you have a compliance structure in place, not only for internal for your company, but to manage those subcontractor and supplier compliances, and understand the reporting that has to be done upwards on that. The reporting cadence, it's important that you go through a contract and understand that there's certain reporting that has to be done at certain periods of time, and make sure you get that into your rhythm of your business so that you don't fall behind. Late reporting is one of the things that people get dinged on their contractor performance assessment reports, the CPARS reports, all the time. And it does not look good when you're trying to go for that next contract if you're struggling to keep up with reporting on a current contract. You want to make sure that you can collect and segregate costs as you need to under a government contract, so you have bookkeeping and accounting all set up and good to go. If you're struggling to pull together your QuickBooks again at midnight to pay your suppliers at the end of the month, you have to have something better than that to work on a government contract. You're going to have a regular accountant, somebody that does this work for you. Record keeping is very important. You need to have good record keeping. There's a lot of people out there that teach on SharePoint, which I would recommend is one of those entry-level record keeping type things that people should not try to live without. Good record keeping is important for audits. You see that other bullet. And contract closeout, when you want to get to contract closeout and prove that you've done the work, you've done it well, you've met all the requirements, and the government can pay you that final payment, and you can move forward successfully onto your next venture. Cybersecurity, I think, is one thing people have to really be aware of. That's a real hot topic, especially if you're going to work for DoD. Cybersecurity is one of those things that you must make yourself aware of, and I have a lot of good resources on my website to help with that. So let's just, I'm going to give you a quote here to kind of wrap it up. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. And why I put this quote on here is that it's really important that you try to learn the government process and learn about the agencies and the agency's mission first, instead of going to them and telling them all about you, because you will have more people interested in you when you talk to them about them than you ever will if you go to them and say, "Hey, I'm this company, I do these great things, and I'm here to help." You can do that, but they hear that a lot. Come in with understanding the knowledge and the pain points of that agency, who they are, what they're trying to do, who they're trying to serve, how they fit into the overall economy, defense, and public support that the government provides our country, and you will catch their attention because you are interested in them. That will catch their attention. And I can't say that enough. That has always been the thing that has impressed me the most as a contracting officer, is when contractors came in knowing about more, just as much about my agency, or near a lot about my agency as I did, could tell me what was going on, had read the articles, had gone out to the websites, had researched what we were doing, and saw the trends of what we were buying and where we were doing work and things like that. Very impressive. You will make friends that way with an agency. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to go out here and look at the chat. I'm going to find my chat box over here and see if we have any. We just have the one about the slides. If anybody has any questions, you can come off mute and we can answer them for you, and go from there. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to see if they have anything they want to ask. I think one of the big questions I get on a regular basis is, can you provide support to do certain things? In terms of me myself as the owner of FedSubK, I'm a one-woman show here, but I'm building a network of support providers that can do business development, bid and proposal preparation, help with cybersecurity, AI tools that I have demoed and found to be what I think are the best for their price point, given the needs of small businesses and some of the unique features small businesses need. And I will be launching a support provider page as part of my next newsletter at the beginning of July, so that people have those references and resources. I'm not getting paid by any of them. If I am, I disclose it. So there may be an affiliate link in there for a training or something like that. But this is what I'm trying to do, is build a resource of trusted providers for small businesses, so that if I can't do it for you, there's places that you can go. Thanks, Beth. I really appreciate the compliment. I'm trying to do my best out here. So just to give you an overview of FedSubK, if you haven't been out to the website in a while, is the homepage here. Talk about how you can subscribe. Of course, you're here because you're a subscriber. That's how you saw this announcement. We also have a quick links page with guides and featured small business events. The quick links are by category, so you can find just about anything you need to out here as a small business. I add to it all the time. So check back often. If there's something you need and you don't see, reach out. I'm happy to find it, chase it down, and get it on here so that it's a resource not just for you, but for everybody. I also go through all the small business event calendars for the agencies and SBA, and I try to pluck out the ones that I think are the most important, that would be a good use of your time if the topic interests you. There's hundreds of things that you could watch every month, but I think there are some that are the most important, and I try to highlight those on the website every month for the current month and going forward. If what I'm highlighting isn't what you're interested in, I also have links to all the small business event calendars for every agency. So they're out there for you to view as well, bookmark for yourself, and also some extra resources there, like the Federal Business Council events, National Women's Small Business Council, Women in Public Policy, et cetera, SAME, and can go from there. And then lastly, I have a blog. I do at least 2 articles a month, if not more. And then we have all the archived issues of the newsletter out there. They are, as you can see, they are categorized by categories. So you can pick a category that works best for you and go from there. So with that, if anybody has any more questions, doesn't have any more questions, I'll just leave you with this, which is a huge thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. Here's all the contact information for Federal Subcontract Solutions, or FedSubK, and myself. Feel free to reach out anytime by email, direct message on LinkedIn, or give us a call, leave a message. The website also has a contact us form, so you can reach out there as well. Happy to set up consultations with folks. And we'll be doing more of these events. We're going to start going through and walking through the steps and actually talking about those action items in each of those steps of the 8 essential steps, and showing people how to use some of those tools, and talking through how to maybe interpret some of that data that's out there that can be a little crazy and hard to understand. So any other questions before we close up for the afternoon? Or the morning, I guess. It's still morning in many places. It's morning in most places. All right. Well, I just want to thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with each of you soon. And you'll see the announcement in the newsletter about future events and when those are and how to sign up and join. So thank you so much for all coming today. Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.